Hi guys, welcome to part 2 of my Illustrator intro tutorials. I know the last one was a bit long. I'm going to make this shorter. I'm sorry, I ramble a bit. I'm sorry. So, part 2. Picking up from where we left off before. I now want to move on. We've gone past the free drawing with the pencil tool and the pen tool. I now want to look at the preset shapes within Illustrator. And what you can do with them, how powerful they are. Essentially, they're basic shapes. But then we're going to look at using the Pathfinder to use shapes against each other. And then we're going to look at ordering and distributing and how that affects the Pathfinder. So, a couple down from the pen tool, which is here above the pencil tool, you've got your rectangle tool, and then behind that, a few other preset shapes. So obviously your rectangle tool, and let's get rid of black because not there's anything wrong with black, but you know, I feel like some color today. So obviously you've got a rectangle tool. It allows you to draw rectangles, tall ones, thin ones, all kinds of ones. If you hold down shift, it will constrain proportions and give you a square. I'm just going to select those and delete them. You have a rounded rectangle tool, which has like rounded edges on the rectangle. If you press up and down on the keyboard, so just the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard, it will increase how much or the amount of roundness of those corners of said rounded rectangle. Next we have our ellipse tool, which allows you to draw ellipses, and if you draw two of them, you draw ellipse with ellipse. No, that doesn't even work. But look, it's ellipse with ellipse. Make them red. Yay, I drew ellipse with. Anyway, sorry, it's a really bad joke, and you guys are all hating me now. But anyway, so allows you to draw an ellipse. If you hold down shift, it will give you a perfect circle. Yay. Otherwise, you've also got your polygon tool, which allows you to draw a polygon. Just like with the rounded rectangle tool thing, if you press up and down on your keyboard, it will increase the amount of sides to your polygon. And if you do it enough, poly will eventually completely go away. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of those, so you're just going to have to suck it up. Anyway, and finally, you've got the star tool, because we're all stars. And same thing, up and down on the keyboard will just increase and decrease the amount of points to your star. You'll also see a thing here, the flare tool. It's completely useless. It's not useless. It does have a use, but you're not going to use it all that often. I've never used it once while I'm working. It does give you like Illustrator's version of a lens flare, but if you're going to do things like that, you're far better off using Photoshop for things like that. But it's still there, and it's the flare tool. So there are our basic preset shapes. So the thing I want to look at now, and I'm going to leave this open because we're going to be working with shapes, is we're going to open up a very, very powerful toolbar. And if you go to Window and go to Pathfinder, right, it opens up this little Pathfinder tab. And what we want to look at are the shape modes within Pathfinder, not the Pathfinders within Pathfinder. I know, just to make it just extra confusing for you guys. Really, really, really powerful tools, the four of these guys, especially the first two, because what they allow you to do is use shapes against themselves. So you can add shapes together, you can minus shapes from each other, and you can intersect and exclude. So what we can now do is utilize the preset shapes that Illustrator has, or shapes or paths that we've created using the pen tool, and use things against each other to create new shapes and things like that. So I'll show you how they work, and then I'll show you a bit of an example of how you could use them. But it's really, really important to remember, and this is why I just want to cover off very quickly about ordering, and to do that we need to see our layers palette. So let's just get rid of our stroke palette for now, and let's just go to our layers. So whenever we create artwork, and what I'm just going to do very quickly is create a green square, and then I'm going to make, why am I doing here when I've got these out? Go away. And then I'm going to make a orange circle, and then I'm going to make a blue. Oh, that's blue. Good orange, Andrew. Good work. That's because I still had it selected, guys. Make sure you deselect when you're drawing other shapes. Don't be like me. So, green square, blue circle, orange polygon, and finally, let's make a yellow star. Right. This is like beautiful stuff. So, you can see that I've created all of these shapes. Inside our layer, see there is an order to these shapes that I've created. So anything that I created afterwards sits on top. So the first thing I created was my green square. It's at the bottom. Then I created my blue circle. It sits next, so on and so forth. And what that means, if these were to be on top of each other, then the blue circle sits on top of the green square, and the orange polygon sits on top of the other two, and this sits on top of everything. So there is an order to the stuff that you create. And if you can imagine yourself looking into your computer screen or looking at the side and seeing all the things you've created, then things sit on top of each other like so. You can always change the order of things. There's a few ways you can do it. You can right click on things, and you can see arrange down here. You can bring things to the front or send them backwards or send them all the way to the back. You can also do it here within your layers palette. So we know that our yellow star sits on top of everything. If I click on it over here in my layers palette, drag it down to the bottom, it now sits below everything, and see it's hidden behind everything. So the reason I'm telling you about this ordering business is because when you're using the shape modes within Pathfinder, whatever you create will always take on the properties of the topmost shape. So whichever sits, not necessarily on top because there might be stuff in between, but whichever is the topmost shape of the shapes that you're particularly working with, it will take on its properties in terms of color or stroke size or stroke style or whatever. So let's just have a look at what the four things these do. So let's grab a shape and let's change it to an orange square, and then I'm just going to copy, no, I'm not, because I hit the wrong button. I'm going to duplicate that, and we now have, let's leave it orange, the same color for now, and then I'll show you the change. Right, and I'm going to make this a rectangle. So here I've got two shapes. If I bring these shapes over the top of each other like that, select both of them, go to my first option, which is unite, right? All it will do is unite those two shapes into now the one path, the one shape. Pretty self-explanatory. Just undo that. If, for example, this was blue, right? So what I now have is, that's really more of a red. I keep saying orange, but that's really more of a red. But anyway, what I now have is, this'll get me, is a green. Haha. What I now have is a green square and a blue rectangle. And you can see the blue sits above the green over here in my layer stack. So if I now do the same thing, have these shapes over the top of each other, select both of them, go to my unite, what I get is a combined shape, which is blue because blue was sitting on top in the ordering. If I undo that and we put our green above and do the same thing, it's going to give me that same shape it created, but it's going to be green because green is sitting on top. So it's important to remember when you're using the Pathfinder that the ordering and the placement of the objects within your layer is important because it will take on those properties. They don't have to be the same shape. If I wanted to do it with a circle, so what I now have is a green square and a blue circle, and we'll drag that over to there, and we'll just make it the same size, so it sits in like that. Ta-da-da-da, ta-da. Right, click both of the shapes, click on my unite, and we get that. It's like the arch window from Play School. Look, yay. Anyway, so you get the idea, guys. It doesn't have to be preset shapes. This is a preset square. If it's a shape that I've made drawing myself with my pen tool, I always seem to draw the same weird thing. Look, this looks like a lion. Looks like there's a lion there or something. Anyway, so crazy weird shape that I've created, preset shape, drag them over the top of each other, select both of them, click unite, same thing. Any shape, any path, as long as they're closed paths, you can unite them. So just looking at the other three very quickly, let's make some more shapes. This time we'll have a green circle, and we will make a, what's a color I haven't used? Just pink. Yay, a pink square. Okay, so green and pink, not the greatest combination of colors, but that's fine. So, the next one we've got is the minus front. So, again, exactly as it says, it's called minus front. It's going to look at whichever shape is in front of the two you have selected and minus that from the one which is underneath. So, with these two shapes, the pink square sits in front. If I select both of them and click on minus front, it deletes the pink square from my green circle because it was in front. If I undo that and we bring our green circle to the front and I select both of them and I say minus front, then it will delete the green circle from the pink square. I know this is all very basic and simple, guys, but what I'm trying to show you is how you can utilize shapes to create other shapes and use shapes against each other to create paths and things like that. I'll show you the last two while we're here, and then I'll very quickly show you how you could utilize these, and then that will be it for this tutorial. So the third one is our intersect. So what that does is looks at the two shapes, looks at the area that they overlap and leaves that behind. So you can see here this area they overlap. If I click on that, it leaves that little bit behind, again taking on the properties of the upmost shape. And the exclude is kind of the opposite to that. It looks at the areas that they overlap, gets rid of that, leaves everything else. So it gets rid of this space and leaves these out here. Probably use the exclude and intersect less than you would use the minus front and the unite, but still important tools. Okay, very, very quickly show you how you could utilize these, all of this Pathfinder functionality. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a blue circle, right? And what I want to do is add a kind of shadow down here, you know, to give it like a fake sort of cartoony 3D look. So rather than sitting here with my pen tool and having to trace perfectly around my circle and then trace back in, I'm just going to use this circle, copy it a few times and use the circle against itself to create that shape. And keep an eye over here on my layers palette because you'll see sort of what's going on as I'm creating my circles. So I've got my first blue circle here. I'm going to go to Command C. I'm using a Mac. If you're using a PC, it is Control C. It's been a while since I've used a PC. But if you can't find it, just go up here to Edit and go to Copy, go to Paste, Paste in front. They all live up here. So I'm going to copy that shape and I'm going to paste it in front. So I now have two of my blue circle over here in my layer stack. And this one, I'm just going to move off slightly like so, sort of to create a little bit of a crescent shape in the bit left over. Right, so I do that. Now I'm going to make another copy of my back original circle because when I cut this out of this, there'll be nothing left, obviously. So I'm just going to copy that original circle, grab these two, minus the front over here, which leaves me with this sort of crescent shape. If I then paste my original circle back in, it's in front, but let's drag it behind my little crescent shape here. If I now select that crescent shape, make it a little bit darker. Right, yay, we have a shadow, very easy. Okay, yes, that's simple and basic, guys, but you get the idea. I'm just using shapes against other shapes. It saves me time, saves me the hassle of having to recreate things like this. And I could do the exact same thing up the top here. If I copy this, paste in front, have it off a little bit, so we'll add a bit of a reflection, like so. Make sure I've got this copied. Grab that, minus front, we're left with that little slither. Drop our original one back in at the back, grab this little slither, make it a little bit lighter. Right, and we're creating highlights now. Yay. It's not really that. It's really not. I'd like that to be a little whiter. Thank you. But, you know, you got, okay, that looks awful, so ignore that. But you get the idea of what I'm doing. Using shapes against each other. Using the Pathfinder. I think that's it for this lesson. So have a play with the Pathfinder tool. If you're wanting to be creating graphics in Illustrator, things like logos, at the end of these tutorials, I'm going to do a bit of a project example and you'll see how we can use it. But just the best thing you can do is just play around with these tools, guys. It's the best way to learn. So have fun, enjoy, and that concludes part 2.